I was just thinking about how few people in life can really handle success at any level. Thank you so much for Why Women Stay in Toxic Relationships. God bless you. Have you noticed that there are very few people that can really manage any level of success before they self-destruct? I look even in terms of our ministry. We ordain a lot of ministers just about every year. And I look at them when they get this little piece of paper in their hands, which is not going to help them preach better at all. In fact, it may make you worse because people expect more out of you. And I look at how their minds, some of them, should I say, not all of them, not even most of them, but a few of them, their minds just get blown and they go on this massive ego trip, and then I watch them crash and burn. How many times do you see people in your circle that, get a promotion, get a job, have a little business success, and all of a sudden the head is inflated, the attitude changes, they go on this ego trip, not understanding that an ego trip is always a rough ride. It's always a rough ride. I was thinking about the nursery rhyme, Humpty Dumpty sat on the wall, Humpty Dumpty had a great fall. Why was Humpty on that wall anyway? Why did Humpty get on that wall? Humpty should have known that he was an egg. Humpty got on that wall because Humpty overestimated himself. Is everybody freezing? I see frozen a lot on the screen. Is everybody freezing? Y'all let me know. It's been crazy here lately anyway. Everybody freezing? Everybody, who's good? Who's good? Yes, you're freezing? No, I'm lost now. Okay. But Humpty got on that wall because he overestimated himself. Somebody talked Humpty up on that wall, and Humpty climbed up on that wall, and then Humpty fell. And nobody could put Humpty back together again. Now, the Bible does not use the term ego, but some synonyms for ego tripping would be pride, vanity, vainglory, and so on. These are some of the terms that the Bible would use when it's talking about somebody that's tripping. Whenever it is mentioned, it's in reference to self-destruction. In Proverbs 16, 18, and 19, it says, pride goeth before destruction, and a haughty spirit before fall. Better is it to be of an humble spirit with the lowly. He says pride goes before destruction. Proverbs 16, 18, I think this is the Message Bible version. I didn't write it down here. It says, this version reads like this, Proverbs 16, 18. First pride, then the crash. The bigger the ego, the harder the fall. First pride, then the crash. The bigger the ego, the harder the fall. First time we see the spirit of ego in action is with Lucifer. And in Isaiah 14, 12 through 15, it says, how art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning? How art thou cut down to the ground, which didst weaken the nations? But thou hast said in thine heart, I will ascend into heaven. I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. I will sit also upon the mount. So Lucifer got the big head. And as a consequence, he got cast down. Now, here are some of the effects of the ego. The ego is the main cause of disrupted fellowship with God. The ego is the main cause of disrupted fellowship with God. There are some of you right now that feel a disconnect from God, and you've not done enough self-analyzing to figure out that you are the problem. Ego is the main cause of disrupted fellowship with God. There's always one person that comes between us and God, and it's usually we ourselves. In Psalm 24, 3 and 4, it says, "Who shall ascend into the hill of the Lord? Or who shall stand in his holy place? He that hath clean hands and a pure heart, who hath not lifted up his soul unto vanity." You cannot get into the presence of God. You cannot get into the presence of God with an inflated ego. There's some of you that are missing the fellowship you should have with God because you are prideful. Arrogance and self-absorption are lethal to fellowship with God because God hates tonight, but I'm going to try to finish this and you guys can catch it on the replay. In 1 Peter 5 and 5, it says, "Likewise, ye younger, submit yourselves unto the elder. Yea, all of you be subject one to another, and be clothed with humility. For God resists the proud and gives grace to the humble." You notice how he says, all of you, he says, "Likewise, ye younger, submit yourselves unto the elder. All of you be subject one to another." How many of us that are on here tonight that can't follow instruction? Even in church, we can't, we don't want to listen to anybody but the pastor. And the church, the church in many cases is too big for one man to run the whole organization, but the people that are in designated positions of authority, you don't want to listen to them because you're ego tripping. You want to get it straight from the man, straight from the horse's mouth. The ego is the main cause of disrupted fellowship with God. Secondly, the ego is the most self-deceiving entity we know. You are deceiving yourself more times than people are deceiving you. You sit there and you think all of these thoughts, these egotistical thoughts, and you talk yourself into things you cannot work your way out of. And then after you talk yourself into it, you want God to help you out of it. But if you create it, God is not obligated to step into it with you. The ego is the most self-deceiving entity. It has this internal conversation that is designed to convince us many times that we are something we're not. It talks us into tempting ambition that we are not even gifted for. Wow. Your ego will cause you to step into arenas that you're not gifted for. God has not called you to it, but because you had this little conversation in your mind that this is what I want, this is what I want to be, Wow. Galatians 6 and 3 says, "For if a man think himself to be something when he's not." My screen is flashing. Why is my screen flashing, Lee? You don't know? I don't know either. It's freezing, I think. Thirdly, let me just cut this short. I don't want to just sit here all night and people not really here. Thirdly, the ego perverts judgment and priorities. When you're ego tripping, it perverts your judgment and it distorts your priorities, decisions, to maintain a false image that gratifies their pride. Did you catch that? When a person is on an ego trip, they make foolish decisions to maintain a false image that gratifies their pride. In Luke 12, 16 through 20, it says, "And he spake a parable unto them, saying, The ground of a certain rich man brought forth plentiful. And he thought within himself, saying, What shall I do? Because I have no room where to bestow my fruits. And he said, This will I do. I will pull down my barns, build greater, and there will I bestow all my fruits and my goods. And I will say to my soul, Soul, thou hast much goods laid up for many years. Take thine easy, drink, and be merry. But God said unto him, Thou fool, this night your soul shall be required of you." Your ego will cause you to pervert your judgment and your priorities. You'll be focusing on one thing, and the more important matters are going undone. This man here's so busy talking about building bigger barns, he lost his soul. And then number 4, the ego makes you a target for manipulation. Whenever you are a person that goes on an ego trip, your buttons are exposed. When you're an egomaniac, people know exactly what to do to manipulate you, and all they have to do is just stroke your ego. They stroke your ego. You're like psychologically and spiritually paralyzed. You can't resist. Wow. Are you that kind of person that all somebody has to do is just stroke your ego and you let all of your guard down, no discernment, no sense of judgment? When you have an ego, when you're on an ego trip, it makes you a target for manipulation. Look what 1 Timothy 3:6 says, not a novice, lest being lifted up with pride, he fall into the condemnation of the devil. You know a novice because a novice, a person that is not experienced or mature in a thing, always carries a spirit of pride. And all you got to do is stroke that pride, and they're gone. Judas even betrayed Jesus because of an ego trip. When you go and research, you just read Matthew 26, 7-16. I won't read all of that. But signs of an ego trip. An ego trip happens when the emotions of the individual carries him or her away into a self-destructive journey based on efforts to accommodate a self-inflated view. It is self-deception at the highest level. Out of control based on an imbalance between the spirit and the flesh. Self-gratification dictates the person's behavior from that agenda. Look what Proverbs 25:20. Over his own spirit is like a city that is broken down and without walls. There's no sense of internal government. Signs of an ego trip. Number one, when you feel the need or feeling the need to be viewed as better. It's when I, as a preacher, feel the need to be viewed as better than the next pastor, better than the next preacher. It's when the one singer feels the need to be viewed as better than the next singer. If you look in Genesis 4 and 4, chapter 4 and verses 4-8, it says, in Abel, he also brought of the firstlings of his flock. You know the story, Cain and Abel. He ended up killing his brother because God received his offering and received his brother's and rejected his. And rather than getting himself together, he was disturbed. Number two, thoughts of how to beat someone in your circle. When you're on an ego trip, you have thoughts of trying to beat somebody that is in your circle, sometimes even your family. The ego will cause a person to compete with people who are on their own team. In 1 Samuel 18, verses 6-9, David is returning into the city and he has won a great victory, and the women start shouting, Saul killed his 1,000, David has killed his 10,000, and Saul got angry and wanted to kill David, though David was Saul's servant. Saul found himself. Number three, I can see this thing is not acting right tonight. Taking disagreement with your opinions personally. You know you're ego tripping when people can't talk to you. Every time they try to correct you or share some knowledge with you, you take disagreement with your opinions personally. Proverbs 17:10 says, a reproof entereth more into a wise man than 100 stripes into a fool. And then number four, believing you shouldn't experience difficult seasons. You are tripping real hard when you feel like you should not have seasons of testing. The ego makes it impossible to accept that we all will have seasons of difficulty. When they arise, the person actually gets angry with God. Write down Ecclesiastes 3:1-6. To everything there's a season and a time to every purpose under the heaven. Everything, everybody, there's a time and a season. I don't know what happened with this Periscope thing tonight. I pray that the replay comes out, and just know I love you guys. I wanted to get on here and to at least address you tonight. And I'm sorry that whatever's going on is going on. I don't think it's on my end, but I love you. And my email is Pastorrcblakes at gmail.com. Pastorrcblakes@gmail.com. If you want to reach out to me, you can do it there. Website is rcblakes.com. You can go there.